You have never truly understood what a broken bone meant. Not really. The last time someone broke a bone near you, there was an emergency room. There were x-rays that showed exactly what had happened inside the body without anyone having to guess. There were people whose entire career was built around fixing exactly this problem. There was pain management sophisticated enough to make the unbearable bearable. There was a cast that held everything in perfect alignment while the body did what bodies do. And 6 weeks later, it was over. Now take every single one of those things away. No x-ray, no cast, no pain management beyond what the earth provides, no person trained specifically to help, no guarantee that help of any kind exists within any reachable distance, and break your leg anyway, alone, miles from anyone. In a world where being unable to walk is not an inconvenience, it is a death sentence. That was the situation every ancient human faced every single time a bone broke. And here is what makes what happened next genuinely extraordinary. They survived it, not occasionally, not by luck, consistently, deliberately, with a level of practical biological knowledge that modern orthopedic surgeons have studied and in some cases cannot fully explain. What the bones tell us let us start with the evidence that nobody can argue with. Bone. Of all the materials that survive across tens of thousands of years underground, bone is among the most durable. And bone tells stories that cannot be rewritten. Healed fractures leave permanent marks that forensic anthropologists can read with precision. The angle of the original break. The quality of the healing. Whether the bone was properly aligned during recovery. Whether the person received care during the weeks the break required to knit back together. Whether they survived. What researchers found when they began systematically studying ancient human skeletal remains changed the assumptions that had been comfortable for a long time. Healed fractures everywhere. At sites across Europe, Africa, and Asia spanning hundreds of thousands of years, ancient human remains showed broken bones that had healed completely. Femurs, tibias, fibulas, ribs, arm bones, vertebrae, bones that had fractured with enough force to be clearly visible in the skeletal record, and then healed with enough quality that the person had continued living for years and in some cases decades afterward. One particular skeleton found in Iraq, a Neanderthal individual scientists named Shanadar I, showed evidence of a withered arm that had been amputated or severely damaged early in life, multiple healed fractures across the body, and survival to an age that researchers estimated at between 40 and 50 years old in a world where 40 was genuinely old. This individual could not have survived without sustained care from others across their entire adult life. The bones proved it. The care was real. The survival was real. And it happened 45,000 years ago. The immediate response here is specifically what happened in the moments after a bone broke in the ancient world and the evidence behind each element. The first problem was not the fracture. The first problem was shock. Bone fractures, particularly of the large bones of the leg, produce immediate and severe physiological shock. Blood pressure drops. The body redirects resources. Consciousness can be compromised. An ancient human in shock from a broken femur on the open savanna was simultaneously dealing with the injury and with a physiological state that could kill them independently of the injury. The group response was immediate. The injured person was moved to shelter, not walking, carried, because an ancient human group understood through accumulated observation that a person in shock needed warmth and stillness above everything else. The warmth was critical, not comfort. Survival. Physiological shock combined with cold is a combination that kills faster than either one alone. The fire went to the injured person before the injured person went to the fire. Then came the pain management. This is the element that modern researchers find most significant because it required a level of pharmacological knowledge that should not have existed yet, but clearly did. Across archaeological sites associated with ancient human habitation, researchers have found consistent evidence of plants with analgesic properties. Plants containing compounds we now understand to be natural pain relievers. Willow bark with its salicylates. Certain species of poppy present in regions where ancient humans lived for tens of thousands of years. Plants containing compounds that reduce inflammation and provide provide measurable pain relief. The pain management was not sophisticated by modern standards. It was not nothing either. It was the difference between a patient who could remain still enough for healing to begin and a patient whose pain produced movement that prevented healing from starting. The splint here is where it gets genuinely hard to believe. The oldest known splint in the archaeological record dates to ancient Egypt approximately 3,500 years ago. Wooden sticks wrapped in linen, applied to broken bones to hold them in alignment during healing. This is the official record. This is the documented evidence. But here is what the bones suggest was happening long before any of that was written down. Healed fractures in ancient human remains from tens of thousands of years before the Egyptian splints show alignment quality that requires external support to achieve. A broken femur left completely unsupported during healing does not knit back together in proper alignment. The forces the body generates through even minimal movement pull the fractured ends apart and off axis. The resulting healed bone shows the misalignment clearly. It is visible. It is measurable. It is unmistakable. But the healed fractures found in ancient remains repeatedly show alignment that requires support. Proper alignment. The kind of alignment that only happens when something holds the bone in position while it heals. The splints they used were not preserved. Wood, bark, and plant fiber do not survive across tens of thousands of years the way bone does, but the evidence of their use is written permanently in the bones of the people who survived because of them. Someone looked at a broken bone and understood intuitively, through accumulated observation, that it needed to be held still and held straight for healing to happen correctly. That understanding predates the written record by an unknown but certainly vast amount of time. Survival filter, run that through the survival filter. A broken bone in the ancient world was one of the most serious events that could happen to an individual, not because it was necessarily fatal on its own, because of what it made impossible. A hunter with a broken leg could not hunt, could not gather, could not flee from predators, could not move with the group when the group needed to move, could not contribute to the survival of the group in any of the ways that justified the group's investment in keeping them alive. The ancient human with a broken bone was entirely dependent. For weeks, in a world where dependency was not a temporary inconvenience, but a genuine threat to group survival. And yet the group kept them alive anyway. Not just alive. Cared for. Fed, protected, kept warm. Kept still. Treated with whatever the plant pharmacopoeia offered. Splinted with whatever materials were available. Monitored through the weeks of recovery. And then, when the bone had healed enough, gradually reintegrated into group function. The survival calculation behind this is important to understand. The group that kept its injured members alive maintained an irreplaceable investment. Every adult in the group represented decades of accumulated knowledge. Hunting knowledge that took years to develop. Plant knowledge that took longer. Social knowledge that held the group's internal relationships functioning. Lose that person and the knowledge disappeared with them. Keep them alive through a broken bone and the investment returned when they recovered. Ancient humans who received care through serious injury and recovered brought something back to the group that the group had paid a significant cost to preserve. Their survival was not charity. It was investment, and the returns were real. Ancient humans understood the timeline of bone healing with a practical precision that only comes from watching it happen thousands of times across thousands of people over thousands of years. They knew that the first days required complete immobility, not reduced activity, complete stillness. The initial fracture site is unstable in ways that early movement destroys completely. Modern orthopedics calls this the inflammatory phase. Ancient humans called it nothing because they had no need to name it. They just knew that the person did not move. They knew that after a certain period, carefully graduated movement actually accelerated healing. Modern orthopedics calls this the reparative phase and the remodeling phase. The bone needs mechanical stress to know where to grow and how strong to become. Ancient humans knew this not because they understood bone biology, but because they watched what happened to people who remained completely immobile for too long versus people who began carefully moving at the right time. The ones who moved too early did not heal correctly. The ones who never moved did not heal correctly either. The ones who moved at the right time in the right way came back strongest. That knowledge was not written anywhere. It lived in the people people who held it and was passed forward through direct teaching across generations. The ones who did not survive here is the honest part of the picture. Not every broken bone healed. Not every injured ancient human survived. The breaks that were manageable were the breaks that healed. Arm bones, lower leg bones, ribs, bones that could be splinted and rested while the person remained in one location. The breaks that were not manageable were the breaks that killed. A fractured pelvis in a world without surgery was almost always fatal. A broken femur that severed the femoral artery killed within minutes. Spinal fractures that compromised the nervous system killed or produced paralysis that in a mobile survival environment was effectively fatal. The ancient world did not have solutions for everything. What it had was solutions for the things that had solutions, and for those, the solutions were real, practical, refined over so many generations of application that they worked with a consistency that the survival record confirms. The deepest truth modern orthopedic surgeons studying ancient bone healing have described something that stays with them. The bones that healed tell you everything about the people who healed them, not just the injured person, the people who cared for them. Because a properly healed femur fracture in an ancient human does not just tell you that the bone healed. It tells you that someone kept that person still for weeks in a world that required constant movement, that someone fed them when they could not feed themselves, that someone managed their pain well enough to allow the stillness that healing required, that someone splinted the break well enough to maintain alignment through weeks of recovery, that someone understood what the bone needed and provided it without any of the tools or knowledge that modern medicine considers the minimum required for the job. The healed bone is not just evidence of survival. It is evidence of care, of knowledge, of investment in another person's life at significant cost to the group doing the investing. Your ancestors did not break bones and hope for the best. They broke bones and got to work with everything they had, which turned out to be more than anyone gave them credit for. Closing CTA the next time you sit in an emergency room, the next time someone slides an X-ray onto a light board and shows you exactly what happened inside your body with a precision that feels like magic. Remember that the magic is not new. It is ancient, refined and rebuilt and renamed by every generation that added to it. But the foundation, the understanding that a broken bone needs to be held still, needs to be kept straight, needs pain managed, needs the person kept warm and fed and cared for by people who choose to stay. That foundation was laid by people who figured it out with their hands and their eyes and the hard evidence of who survived and who did not. You did not inherit a medical system that appeared from nowhere. You inherited one that was built bone by bone, generation by generation, across a darkness so long it has no name, by people who refused to let the ones they loved face it alone. This is Primal Pages. We do not just explain history. We explain the extraordinary ordinary of what your ancestors were actually capable of. If this reached something in you, you already know what to do. We will be here every week, going deeper.